All right, it's 3 o'clock. Let's call the meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order and call roll. George McQuistion, here. Jeff Struble. Here. Nicely done. Betsy Brunstetter. Present. Brian Fitzsimmons. Here. Matt Guillory. Here. Long Nguyen. John Robeson.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Please silence your cell phones, and let's move down the agenda. No cases withdrawn, no continuance requests, the consent docket. Michael?
This is an item that was,
I'm sorry.
Actually,
Michael, I'm sorry, I apologize. In my haste to get to the consent docket, I skipped the minutes, and I actually had a question about the minutes. The minutes in our packet look to be like a red line version, maybe. If you look under item D, is right there. Do you see what it?
Yeah, it does look like you got a red line version.
So if we approve the minutes, we would approve it as redlined, how would? I mean, I would prefer that the final version of the minutes go into.
Sure, we could you could approve it with a condition, or we could revise it and bring it back next time.
Okay, probably easier just to
revise
with a condition. Do we have any motions on the minutes?
I move to revise the minutes and bring them back.
Second.
Okay, that is a motion by Brunstetter, a second by Fitzsimmons. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you, Betsy. Okay, now, Michael, the consent docket, please.
Yes, this is the culmination of a project that was approved back in, I think, 2011 and expired in 2013. The CA on it expired in 2013, and they didn't finish it before it expired, and they did not file for a extension to that original certificate of approval, and therefore we could not approve the finalization of the last 5 buildings in the project without a new CA application being filed, and that's what you have before you today. This project is, I would say, probably 60% complete, and these last 5 buildings will finish the project at the rear of the site. And the 5 buildings proposed in this application are virtually identical to the materials and design that was approved in the original CA back in 2011. The only significant change is the last building on the east end of the project is now one long building as opposed to 4 smaller buildings that were kind of set across the back of the property. Yeah, the applicant is present if you have any questions, and otherwise it's on a consent docket item because it complies with all the conditions and regulations and guidelines that are applicable to the project.
Excellent, thank you. Do we have any motions?
I'll second that.
Okay, that is a motion by Robeson, second by Struble. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion is approved. Thank you very much. Cases for individual consideration, 6A, 500 Northwest 28th Street.
This is an application the Commission is fairly familiar with. You've seen it at 2 prior meetings, actually 3, pardon me. At the last meeting on the 19th, there was a lot of consensus on what should be done to bring the project into compliance with the applicable regulations and guidelines in the Paseo District, and the applicant has worked hard to follow the direction that was provided by the Commission at that meeting, and we've prepared a recommendation for approval of the project. I'm prepared to respond to any questions you may have.
All right. Do any of the commissioners have questions, either for Michael or for the applicant?
I do want to say I appreciate the effort put forth. It does appear to be a better product. I still would prefer to see, interesting. I still prefer to see, this is interesting. I just noticed this. The renderings and the elevations show the single window on the east side. You know, that's been my window that I've been concerned about. But the site plan, maybe I've got the wrong site plan, shows the two windows at the end on the east end.
I had that question too. The site plan doesn't quite map up with the elevations in the rendering.
Right.
Better get up here and answer the questions.
You mind stating your name, Larry?
Larry Pickering, 312 Northeast 37th. We did delete the window that was on the south side of the east elevation. I just missed that on the site plan. I apologize about that. We wanted that to be a feature wall, as we talked about in last meeting, of being either for landscaping or a sculptural element. So we put the bigger window in on the north side of the east elevation, the north end of the east elevation. And that's where the service bar area will be, and the cantina will be in that, on the south wall of that. So a window looking into the side of the service area of the bar was not something that we necessarily needed.
But Larry, your plans and elevations, I believe, now I'm questioning myself, show a small window around the corner. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That window, the small window on the south side, would be looking through the opening of the bar in to the north, so it's not looking directly into the back of the bar.
So just to be clear, the elevations and the renderings are as intended?
Yes.
And minor revision on the site plan, correct?
Yes, Brian.
There are a couple of places where I don't believe the renderings map up with the site plan or the floor plan elsewhere. There are some windows on the west side and on the south side. And on the second floor, I believe the plan shows 6 windows, whereas the rendering shows 5. You know, not huge issues, but it'd be nice to.
Just, if we could do that, George, we can clarify that. It was a time thing. I modeled the two sides of the building, and I didn't model the back side or the west side necessarily, because I was focusing on that.
Yeah, that's
Just the visual.
kind of what I
So,
figured.
yeah.
I don't think you were trying to get anything by anybody. I just think that, you know, but I think you'll agree that the rendering should tie to the.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes.
Now, all of the information shows windows on the north side of, say.
We had a little bit of a clarification with Michael on the elevations of the site with the number of steps and risers that's on the site, both on the right side of the main entry of the building and the left side of the main entry, and then out of the patio. We haven't quite worked that out yet, but in our discussion, we'll work that out as we get through the site planning process. Those elevations may change just a bit.
The other thing I was going to, I'm sorry, go ahead, man.
I have a little bit of a conceptual question, I guess. At the last meeting, we discussed that the concept was to have something that appeared to be 3 separate buildings. Is that still the proposed concept, or are we going further away from that?
Well, as you know, when you start getting the model in, and that's what we've been working towards and asking for, you kind of tweak it. We put a little more emphasis, which you can see on the entry for the cantina. If you go back to that overall aerial, you can see that roof line over there, and that's shown on the elevations. We wanted to emphasize that to dress it up a little bit.
Okay.
So that really became, kind of an element all to itself, and it's on the back side of the building, so it really doesn't relate to the front elevation. And then the west end of it, where the coffee shop / is, was a little bit more of a de-emphasis, not putting a great amount of emphasis on there, because you're going to be entering through the colonnade and from the front, the north side. So we did a little bit different roof element there with just the straight clay tile awning, basically.
Okay.
So yes.
And last month, I think the proposal was to have potentially 3 different colors for the 3 different buildings. This looks like it's going away from that. Is
the shading on the elevations that you see, on the renderings that you see, the west side would be a little bit darker. We're going to stay in the white to light tan tones.
okay?
It would be a little darker. The front facade and the front pediment of the building would be a little bit of a different shade than the second floor. Second floor would be the same as the cantina wing. You look back on the aerial view from the northeast, you kind of see that
Okay.
in there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the requests at the last meeting was to understand a little bit more about the materials for the windows, and I don't know, John, if that was one of your requests, or I might defer to an architect to talk about what you'd like to see in terms of, I'm not sure that the windows are described as kind of aluminum storefront. I don't know if you care about a color right now, or, John, if you had more detail regarding the materials you wanted to know about.
I did bring a sample, if you guys want to pass anything around.
Yeah, that'd be
of just
good.
the bronze storefront, and I've also got the finished sample for the stucco.
Perfect.
It's not going to be the exact, we're going to work on the color, but it is the texture that we want to use.
Okay.
The storefront, the lower windows would be storefront glazing in a dark bronze, and then the upper windows would be a divided light window in the same coloration, a metal-clad divided light window, true divided light window.
Larry, it looks like you've got a little more detail on these windows, the way you're drawing them, than a normal stick wall, like where the intersections are.
John, that's a process of the SketchUp. It's got the lines over the top of it. They're just clean lines. They're just clean storefront frames.
Okay. Well, I sort of like.
I'm not a SketchUp expert, so I didn't quite get past that point in the time frame. So. But we went with the larger display windows, and then the divided windows on the top banding of that with the 3, and that's consistent around the base of the building, and then the divided light windows on the top floor, which will be operable. We would want those to be an operable window.
Larry, if you wouldn't mind passing those around, that'd be great. Thank you. And while we're doing that, is there anyone from the audience who wanted to speak about this project?
It's just a 2x4 stick wall, is that what it is?
Yes, sir. And again, on the stucco sample, we wanted to avoid the really, really heavy stucco look. We wanted to go with a little bit of a smoother trowel finish on it.
Larry, do you have a cut sheet for those upper windows? Because your note is a little weird.
I do not have a cut sheet. I can certainly supply that. It would be our anticipation would be a casement window
So it's a casement window, it's not a storefront.
on the second floor.
Yeah, it says insulated glazing and aluminum storefront, which is what's below, I think. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then with operable casement windows, typical. So that's describing
That's the
a...
second floor, yes. We
So
would be
probably
providing a frame.
getting Michael the information would be really good.
Okay, absolutely.
Are the divided lights, real divided lights
divided
on the
light.
second floor?
Yes, sir.
That's why the information
That would be helpful, yeah.
would be really helpful, because the notes are not very clear on that.
We would look at several different manufacturers on that and it would just be a price point, but our intent would be to go to a true divided light with a metal clad on it.
Any other questions at this point? Betsy, did you have any other questions or concerns? Okay. Do we have a motion from anybody?
I'll move for approval.
Okay, just let me remind you that a couple of things we talked about here were, one, getting more detail on the window that maybe
For
Mike...
staff.
For staff, exactly. And then maybe tying together in a final version the elevations, rendering and plan.
Move for approval with staff information on the window detail and elevation.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, that is a motion by Struble, second by Robeson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that's approved. Thank you guys very much for sticking with us through the process. Appreciate it. All right, item 6B, 2412 North Ollie.
Yes, this item is a CA that is a follow-up to a SPUD that you saw earlier this year. I believe it was back in October. Just for the commission's benefit, I wanted to let you know that the SPUD was approved yesterday by the City Council per the attachment in your packet. And wanted to let you know that the reason we have brought it to you today and are looking at approving it so quickly after the City Council approval is we didn't want to make the applicant wait till January to come before you for this. So we took the step of assuming that the SPUD would be approved as written and reviewed it per those specifications in the SPUD and assumed that it would be approved that way, and therefore we reviewed it against those provisions in the SPUD that was approved yesterday. We find it to be compatible with all the regulations and specifications that were set forth in that approval yesterday, and we're prepared to recommend approval to the commission.
And I would say I compared what was in our packet. Was in our packet, is that what was approved by council?
The SPUD
Yes, the
design
SPUD,
statement, yes,
yes.
that was approved by.
Because that seemed to reflect what came out of the prior meeting. And if there were a few tweaks, they were more restrictive, not less restrictive. So, and I just wanted to clarify that up front. Are there any questions or any motions about this item?
I have a quick question. Brian may know the answer to this. I don't think that EFS is allowed in UDC unless it's above the ground floor. Do you know that? I like the design, really like the design. I think it's very cool, but... It's listed as EFS. Well, I think that should be clarified. I mean, this can be resolved by just using plaster instead of EFS, but that...
I don't have the code here with me. I don't believe I would have recommended it for approval if it was an issue. I think what we can do is, if there's a concern about that, you could probably approve it with the condition that we verify that EVIS is permitted, and if it's not, that they have to convert to stucco.
I'm just seeing if I can turn quickly to this. Urban design. Well, what this says is building material requirement, metal siding is not permitted for exterior walls of buildings. Does somebody want to take a look at this who?
Oh, yeah, that's now that you say that, the overarching UDC, my recollection, doesn't really prohibit anything except metal.
Right.
So,
Yeah, the EVIS prohibition is in downtown.
Okay.
I do know that in the past we have recommended against EFIS because of its vulnerability. It's not a very durable material. And that can just be a warning to the owner.
We did, consider the use of the EVIS in our evaluation, but we felt that because it was on the back side of the building, not as visible and not as accessible to people other than the tenant, and that because the yard that the building is in is entirely fenced, the accessibility to those walls where the EVIS is proposed is extremely limited. So,
With that being said, I will move approval for this application if everybody has finished
Second.
their comments.
Okay, Lisa, did you want to continue to peruse? Or?
I can't quickly locate it.
Well, we have I think that we're on track with the lack of an EVIS requirement in the UDC that would impact this. So Betsy Brunstetter has made a motion. John Robeson has seconded it. All in favor? What?
Michael had recommended two formal conditions in the staff report. One was that the SPUD be approved, and which it was, but it wasn't at the time we wrote the report.
Correct.
The other was to address
Commercial
waste receptacles, which are generally, there's no ordinance provision about them if it's residential, but if it's a commercial structure, then they have to be screened.
Michael, would that happen as a matter of course, given that we modified the SPUD to have to conform to the UDC overlay?
well, the question becomes whether or not this is a residential or a commercial use, because it's actually split. There are both uses proposed in the core of the structure. And in talking with the applicant about their plans for trash collection, they, at this point in time, are proposing to use standard residential carts for trash collection. And that being the case, we don't normally require screening for residential carts if you're a single-family residence or a duplex or whatever, so we didn't decide to require any screening in this case, although in this case there is no garage and there really isn't any place for the carts to be stored unless they decide to put them inside, which I doubt they will do. Hopefully they'll use this courtyard area between the existing fence and the parking lot to perhaps keep them out of sight as best as possible. But because there is a commercial enterprise proposed as part of this project, we did want to cover the situation in case at some time in the future they did convert to commercial collection or collection of the trash, that they would at that time provide a screening for the receptacle, trash receptacle, and they would likely have to come back before us for a revision to the CA to have that enclosure approved, and more than likely be administratively approvable.
Is that something we can put into the motion and it can be followed? If at some point they need a dumpster, will they be, and they get cited or whatever? and then it's reflected in our motion and in our, the final CA.
If it's not a current requirement, then no, you couldn't put that in there because that's beyond the scope of what your current code says. But if it is a part of the current code, then you could, but you can't be, that would be like saying you will always follow all of the rules, and which of course they would, but this CA wouldn't cover them because it's an application today based on what the rules are today.
So the rule is today that if they have a dumpster, they have to have an enclosure for the dumpster.
And Michael is saying that because of the residential piece, they're probably going to have just a regular cart.
Yeah, they don't have a dumpster at this point in time.
So if you're saying if you ever get a dumpster, then you have to enclose it, then that would be appropriate.
Okay. So I will change my motion, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
to stipulate that if they should ever require the need of a dumpster, that they would also enclose that dumpster as required by today's codes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, and the second by John Robeson. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you. Item 6C, 915 Northwest 8th Street.
This item is a proposal for demolition of an existing single-family residence and a detached garage at 915 Northwest 8th Street. This happens to be directly across the street from a project that was recently approved by the commission at 916 Northwest 8th Street. And in that case, the demolition was approved, and at that time, the applicant had a proposal for a new residence to replace the demolished structure on that lot. In this case, the applicant is simply requesting demolition of the structures, and it has no plans, at least at this point in time, for you to review for a proposed replacement structure. And the applicant's present if you have any questions for him about that. We have prepared for you our standard recommendation for demolitions in the Cottage District, and that is to say that if the commission feels that the structure is important to the history of the district, then you should recommend denial of the request. And if you find that it is not crucial to the history of the district, then you have the ability to go ahead and recommend or approve the request for the demolition. That completes our presentation. We're prepared to respond to any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Any of the commissioners have questions for Michael or the applicant?
I just have a comment. It looks to be a fairly decent example of a recognized style, and it's the oldest building in the area, I guess, or at least the oldest. I think it is. I think they said it was the oldest one in the oldest area, one of the oldest areas. So I don't think it's good to have buildings falling apart in neighborhoods, particularly if we're trying to develop them. But we do have some responsibility to preserve historic buildings. It's not a profoundly historic building, but it, I mean, it doesn't have anything beyond the fact that it's an old building, and it does actually fairly well represent that style. So what's the hurry?
I'm sorry?
What's the hurry? Why are we in a hurry to take it down?
Maybe this would be a good time for the applicant to go ahead and state your name and address, please.
Adam Haas, address.
Did you want to answer the question? I think,
Yeah.
John, you were asking kind of what what's the hurry to take this building down?
Well, it's just something that I think we need to think about. I like what's going on over there in general, but there's not much left because we're taking it all down.
There's not many of these houses left on this street. Most of them have been knocked down. Obviously, it's all the new modern architectural houses that are going on in there right now. And, for me, in my opinion, it does justice to the neighborhood to take it down now because you have so many properties that are, coming up and being developed. And like you said, this one's kind of an eyesore, especially compared to the neighbors. The other issue that we have is a lot of people breaking into these houses and squatting in them and everything else because they are vacant. And I'd like to not have that, especially considering what I had on 916. I left it as long as 916 I left as long as I could, and then I ended up with some nice gentlemen living in there for a while. And, and causing obviously an extreme amount of liability. It doesn't matter how well you board up these houses, those guys get in. So that was kind of my haste on getting that one knocked down, was to have it where it was a nice, clean lot, nice and, that way when I do the design and proposal, I can submit it to you guys based on the vacant lot.
I have a couple of concerns that maybe are similar to John's. One is we typically like to know kind of what we're getting if we're going to make a decision to take down a structure. It's nice to know what's going to replace it. And the other question about this particular one, I pay attention to the Midtown area because I'm on this board and I look at the listings that come up, and I remembered the listing for this property because it was so interesting to me, because it said the listing price, and then it said it was clearly positioned, this is a valuable land only, and then it also said don't disturb the renters. And I found that interesting. So people have been living here fairly recently, right?
Yeah.
And so, I didn't know how to square that with, well, people are living there. Is the structure really that far gone that it can't be brought back? And that maybe we've turned a corner in the cottage district in Midtown where people know that the value's in the land and not the structure, and so they're already anticipating something else going there, which I think is a trend. I'm not sure it's a good trend, but it is a trend. I didn't know if you want to respond to people living there and whether this could be rehabbed and brought back.
Part of my purchase contract was to obviously not have anybody living there when I took possession of the property. And when I took possession of the property, there was one guy sleeping in the back. I don't know whether or not he was actual renter or whether or not he was just squatting there, but the hot water tank was gone. Furnace was gone. Most of the kitchen's not there. I mean, to be honest, on a lot of these houses, I'm not sure how people live in them, but they do. And people collect rent on that, which is even more shocking to me. But as it stands right this instant, that house is not livable. It would need, wiring, plumbing, HVAC, I mean, the whole 9 yards just to get livable. And then on top of that, you're talking lead-based and whatever other hazard material you get into when you get into a house of that age. As I found out on 916, the actual foundations, there's no actual foundation on these houses either. They just cinder blocked them up and put the house on them. That's why you see all kinds of settling and cracking and movement in them. They weren't obviously done to any sort of code when they were built. They were just built. Short answer, no, definitely not livable. I would be scared to estimate how much money it would cost to actually get that structure livable again, for sure. So,
Betsy?
Well, I would, just because of precedence and because we really need more information to, I think, personal opinion, to allow a demolition.
On the proposal, on what I proposed to put there, you mean?
Well, that and the fact that we need more information on the conditions of the house. And I don't know that we really feel like we've got I don't know.
There's
Do you guys
some more pictures.
feel like you have enough?
There's more. I provided more pictures, right, than that? So that's inside and out. Obviously, the whole house is leaning. Both the house and the garage are both leaning now.
I've seen much better bad pictures.
Oh, I'm sure. I could go.
I'm serious.
I could get in there. I could get in there and get a lot more. I was trying to, expedite the process. Now, as far as what I plan to put on there, I plan actually to put on what we're working on right now is the lot. There used to be an alley that went through there, and now there is no alley. It's kind of an interesting lot line, the way it works there. I'd like to put either a duplex or two freestanding. The ideal situation is two freestanding modern homes on that property. I think it would be really cool, and it would tie in nicely for what's going on at that particular block as well. So I just haven't got to that exact design that I would be comfortable, going, hey, this is exactly what we're doing yet. Driveways, setbacks, and stuff like that. That's what I'm working on right now to make sure that it all works perfectly.
Brian, I want you on the spot.
I mean, I would just kind of overarching observation. You're right. There's obviously a trend, and the trend is shifting to now speculative development. With that, I think the burden of us deciding whether something should be allowed to be demolished or not should, at a minimum, be consistent with previous requirements that we took, which was more information of what's wrong with the house or what is going to be intended to be replaced. We need to at least be consistent. If we suggest that this is demolished today based on this information, we're actually lessening our standards in our consistency.
Okay. I think that's a good point. So in terms of the applicant, we would like, I thought I heard Betsy saying, and maybe you too, Brian, that we would like to see both plan for the future. And it sounds like you're well down the road there, at least. You've articulated some of the things that you're considering. And then also a little bit more information on the state of the building, the kind of costs required, what exactly is wrong that would need to be repaired. Okay. Just a bit more quantifiable information that we can use to make the decision.
Okay.
Does that resonate with other people? I don't know if there are any.
This is a stupid question. Does HP see this?
No.
These houses when they're going down? They're not in over there? Okay. Yeah, I'd like a chance to just go by and look at it.
I have a question, too. If we continued this, if he would come back with what he was going to build there, would that be in the continuance, or would he have to do another application?
You could continue it, and we would have to you could continue it indefinitely, and we would renotice it when it was ready to go, based on when we get the plans we need to bring it back to you. I don't know what your time frame would be in terms of having your plans ready, but the deadline's already passed for the January meeting, so the earliest meeting you could make would be February.
Definitely be
And the deadline for that would be be like the 13th, I think, of January.
I guess my question on that is whether or not those plans would really be what you're planning to do, or if you really have a much further timeline out there that you're really not.
Oh, no. We've been working on the plans for a long time. We do all our own design and plan work, so sometimes we're our own worst enemy. We'll go through revision 999 to make sure that it's perfect. We take great pride, like 916, we take great pride in what we do and how we do it, and it has to be very well thought out. So we go around the neighborhood and we make sure that we're doing something that represents also all the other, it makes sense in the whole neighborhood. We don't like to have that sore thumb sticking out either. And considering the neighborhood in that street specifically, on 8th Street, there's actually, I believe at this point, there's more modern houses on that street than there are historical houses. 811 just got demolished. 910 just got demolished. 910 9th Street just got demolished. in that particular area now, there's more houses that are modern, so I think that would be the direction where we would go. And, you know, we're pretty far along the lines. We just want to make sure it's perfect before we submit it to you guys. Last thing I want to do is come back and waste any more time going, you know, well, sorry, that wasn't going to work. Hey, we're going to go this direction. So, but I think if you're saying mid-January, Michael, I'm pretty sure we can get some pretty good representations by that time. And if not, you know, I'm not too proud to say, hey, we'll see you guys March. So, you know, I got 916 we're building and finishing up another couple of houses in that neighborhood. So, you know, my biggest concern in that neighborhood is just the squatters and the people, the vandalizing and stuff like that, and the liability that's assumed with that. And, you know, that was my concern when I submitted the application for demolition, was just having that house there is an extreme liability for us, for the neighborhood, and I didn't want to see anything happen, because we already had people in and out of that house. They, you know, kick in the back door, and those houses, you can put as much plywood up as you want. It's pretty easy to get into those, so.
Actually, the deadline for the February meeting would be the 27th of January. I forgot that we had moved your meeting up this month because of the holidays, and your meeting in January is the 28th, and the deadlines are always the day before your meetings. So the 27th will be the deadline for the February meeting.
Just got an extra week.
Any additional comments, questions, motions?
It may not be related to this case, but was 910 ever, has that ever come before the commission?
910?
That's on
9th Street.
You know, I believe there was an application filed for that when Brandon was here handling downtown. I believe that's outside the Cottage District, the one on 9th.
It could be, it's the next
I
street
think it
over.
is. And that's in downtown, and I think that application never went very far because there was a lot of questions about who the property owner was, and it was never sorted out.
That's that neighborhood in that. Yeah, there's, and, you know, I keep up with the neighborhood as well. I want to make sure that we're doing that. There's obviously a lot of vacant lots in that, and on this particular street right now, because there's a lot of future plans to build. So, and you know, most of those actually have plans, because I've looked at, you know, on 813 now we have 811 going up and everything like that. So, you know, and yeah, I mean, however you guys want me to approach it, I will.
Okay, terrific. Any motions, questions?
I move we continue it, and pending getting more information on the state of the structure and some new design information.
How much time would you need? We could do it, I mean, 60 days, or, I mean, what? Definitely?
What's the date today?
February?
Is it December 18th today?
Today is 17.
Yeah, I would be able to make the February meeting. I'd be able to make the
Okay.
February meeting.
Continue it to the February meeting.
What is the date of the February meeting?
The 28th. Is that, oh, what'd you say it was?
28th is January. I don't know the date of the February.
February meeting is February 25th.
So submission for January 27th, you said?
Submittal deadline, January 27th.
Yeah, that gives me just over a full month.
Okay? Okay, so we have a motion. Motion by Mr. Robeson, second by Mr. Struble. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, well, look forward to seeing you in February then. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Communications, administrative approval report. Anything, Michael, that you want to call our attention to here?
No, there's nothing really of any significance on this report. All pretty straightforward, regular stuff that we normally approve, so.
The Board of Adjustment approved Randy Floyd's variance. And are there any additional comments from the Planning Department staff?
Yes, I wanted to alert the commission to the fact that you are scheduled at your next meeting in January to elect new officers. And so you might want to start thinking about who would be a good person to replace the current officers, if you think they need replacing.
That's Michael, definitely appreciate that, and I will just echo what I said at our workshop, which is it's great to get new blood in these roles to increase the bench strength of the city and to not fall prey to founder syndrome by the same person chairing the panel again and again and again.
She's only been on it a couple of years.
Been a number of years. So consider that. Anything else, Michael? Lisa, did you want to make any comments regarding comments from commissioners? I would thank Lisa and staff for the great workshop that they put on. And Rita, that was fantastic. Thank you very much. Very informative. The next meeting date is Thursday, January 28th. Relevant information is in the agenda. If there is no further business since there is no further business before this body, we will consider ourselves adjourned.
We did it.